Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started? I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you for attending EC 2021 today. This is one of our final sessions of the day. Hopefully you've been able to participate in some great sessions. Our next session is something new to CEWD and EC 2021, and that's something that we're calling Ask an Expert. This specific session is we're going to be talking about positioning your resume and professional profile for a career in the energy industry. And these sessions, these Ask an Expert sessions are really designed to be more engaging and letting you talk directly with an expert. I'm Becky Megason, and I'm a CEWD consultant, and will be your moderator for the program this afternoon. I'm just delighted to have to introduce you to a colleague of mine, actually, who really has a passion for helping individuals prepare themselves for job search, such as yourself. She likes to call herself the career stager. Barbara Schultz is a certified professional resume writer, and yes, you can get certification, and let me tell you, it's no easy task. She is certified through the National Resume Writers Association. Barb acts as a sounding board to help individuals such as yourself build job search strategies, and really wants to commit, words to paper, but always wants to do that in your voice, because there's nothing better in a job search than your own personal voice. In addition to being a resume writer, Barb herself has over 20 years of experience as an HR executive in the energy industry, and really has always been focused on the future of the workplace. Barb is also an author. She co-authored a book several years ago called Adulting Made Easier, Navigating from Campus to Career. This is a book geared toward generations Y and Z and helping understand how to navigate the career search process. She's also a freelance writer and often writes for many HR websites, including SHRM. Job Hunt recently named her a mid-career job search expert. In her free time, she does do volunteer work. I'm not sure when she has free time, but she does mentor new HR professionals for a local SHRM chapter, and does some resume writing also for the Chicago chapter of the Posse Foundation. I'm also going to add she's a pretty good chef too, even though she won't admit it. Mm-hmm. But Barb's eager to engage with all of you. And as I said, this is really a session designed for you. Barb has a PowerPoint presentation for you that'll kind of walk you through some tips, some do's and don'ts on job search. But the value you're going to get out of this session is to literally ask Barb questions. You can ask the questions either live, just take your phone off mute. You can come on camera. You don't have to come on camera. You can also put your questions in the chat feature. So I'd really encourage you to take this opportunity to ask someone that has an awful lot of expertise in the job search and resume writing field. Take advantage of this time with her. So I would say sit back, listen, and please ask lots and lots of questions. So Barb, it's all yours.
Thank you, Becky. Hope I can live up to all the nice things that you said about me.
You will. You will.
Okay, yeah. So also wanted to thank CEWD for the invitation to be here, because like Becky said, I really do love helping people find a job and get a job. And I'm, looking at all of the events of today and saying, how great is it that an entire industry would, literally kind of roll out the welcome mat to people and say, we've got jobs and, we want you to come in and work for us. So you've heard about all sorts of opportunities during the course of the day about both traditional and emerging roles, but both of them great paths. And you're probably wondering, that all sounds great, but how do I get them? So the emphasis has probably been on job skills that you've heard all day long. And absolutely, you need the knowledge, the skills, the abilities to meet the requirements of the job. But maybe what you hadn't considered so much is that you also need job search skills. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We've got a pretty diverse audience, so I want to make sure that I'm really focusing on things that are important to everyone, including people who are still in high school, those who are in college and kind of ready to make a move, and career changers who are thinking about pivoting from what they're doing now. I'm assuming you've had some good advice, some bad advice about resumes, and people are well-intentioned, but sometimes it can get very confusing. So we're going to cut through the confusion today and share best practices from National Resume Writers Association. Not going to drown you in statistics. I want to give you some really practical advice that you can walk away after this session and say, aha, I think I have a really clearer picture of what I need to do. Like Becky said, it's going to be about strategy. And that starts with a resume, but it absolutely doesn't end there. So we'll talk about the other pieces of what I'm going to call your marketing campaign to really get your foot in the door now that they've rolled out the welcome mat. So we're going to start. Hopefully. Sorry. Thought this would come right up. Okay. Yay. Okay.
You did it.
Yeah. All right. This is something that I hear from job seekers, and it doesn't matter what age they are. I'm perfect for the job. Isn't it obvious? And I have to say, no. So you see a posting and you think, hey, I'd be a great match. I just have to kind of put a resume together and they'll see how great I am. And you may be. And by the way, it's wonderful to have confidence, but you really have to focus on the audience, the HR person, the recruiter, the hiring manager. And it's up to you to be your best own advocate. And if you do that, it will be obvious if you have a consistent message, and it does start with a resume. Okay, so what we're going to cover today. First of all, with the resume, we're going to focus on best practices. One size does not fit all. So yes, there are some universals, and we're going to walk through two samples of a student resume and a career changer resume, so we can take some of the things that we're talking about and apply them in kind of real life. Next one, ATS, or applicant tracking system. So I put a little kind of robot head there to symbolize what it's about. However, if there are any HR people in the audience, I know it's not really a robot. It's a screening process that's based on artificial intelligence. But know that there are a number of hurdles that you have to jump through, and there are gatekeepers, and their job is to eliminate those who don't qualify and get it down to a reasonable number of candidates. Networking, I also call it value of social capital. And honestly, if you have one takeaway beyond how to write a good resume, it would be the value of networking. Absolute best way to find a job. We're going to move on then to talk about, well, how do I network? And one of the best sort of world market of where to find people is LinkedIn. They have, how many members? 756 million worldwide. So lots of people to connect with. Cover letters. You might think that they are a thing of the past, but actually they've kind of come back in vogue, and we'll talk about the principles, and those are how to grab attention, how to generate interest, create desire, and then there's going to be a call for action at the end. Unlike the resume, it gives you an opportunity to kind of infuse some of your personality and make your points, but I'll show you the difference between doing that and simply absolutely reiterating what you had in the resume. You don't want to do that. And what it's really all about is the employer, I'm going to call it employer motivators. And that is, there are basically 10 reasons why an employer is going to buy your services. So how can you bring value to them? And, again, I can stop at any point here and elaborate. So I'll just keep moving on until someone says stop. Okay. So we do have a diverse audience today, and you're going to care about different things depending upon what stage of life, what stage of career you're in. So these aren't absolutes for each sort of group. There can be crossovers, but it's important to kind of understand where people are at and where they want to be, because it does play into the strategy of how to write a resume. So for example, let's start with high school students. I look at that as a time to really start building a foundation of what you want to do next. You may have a part-time job, which certainly kind of you're dipping your foot in the pool of careers and learning how to show up, how to make a commitment, how to deal with fellow employees. But beyond that, some of the things that are really important are that you are selecting courses on what you might do in the future. You may be deciding if you want to have a 2-year, a 4-year, an apprenticeship. So it really depends on which way you want to head. And one thing that you may have talked about during today, didn't make all of the sessions, is social identity. And I want to say you need to graduate from how you use social platforms today, move away from Snapchat, TikTok, etc. But more than that, you've probably heard your share of all the negatives, and I really want to focus on how you can really optimize those platforms, not just plain stay away from them.
Barb,
yeah,
Barb, we have a question in the chat from
great,
Brian. And it says, how do you get your resume / application past the gatekeepers so the company actually sees your resume?
Yeah, so we will get to that. There are actually a number of formatting. So the issue with the applicant tracking system is it is not as smart as a human, and it can't read the way that we can read. So if you don't mind, I'm going to cover that in a minute or two, and I'll keep coming back to the best way to get around an ATS is to network, but we'll get there. So I'll give specific examples.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you, Brian.
But yeah, keep them coming. Career changers. So, sorry, college students. So now you are getting closer to launching a career. So your focus is different. And you now have to sort of get in that world of adulting, like the book I wrote about it. So you have academic background, you have potential, but you lack the experience. So the kinds of things that you have to think about are, well, who am I and where would I fit well? And quick story, had a client who was an engineer, came out of school, and he was going to make 6 figures and thought he had just, really landed a phenomenal opportunity, which he did financially, but didn't really think about what would make him happy. Ended up in North Dakota. Nothing wrong with North Dakota, but I've been there. There's a rather harsh climate. And so he ended up in the job for less than a year and moved on. So you want to think about not only what is the job, what is the company culture, and how you would fit into it. Last group, career changers. So these tend to be the more seasoned workers, and there are both challenges and opportunities for them. And much of it is about, I am now changing what I had been doing. So I have to rebrand myself a bit, because now I'm kind of showing a different identity to employers. I may have skills that I've got to learn that are peculiar to the job I'm going to. And so being sort of current and relevant with that is really important. Unlike the college student who's looking to get rid of debt, career changer has a bit of a different problem, but it's still around comp, which is I made X in my old job, and now yes, I'm very attracted to this new job, but I have bills to pay, and will I be able to be at the same level of comp, or can I sort of switch gears and make less, or hey, maybe you're going to make more. Okay, so best practices for, these are for sort of across the board, these are the universals. Again, it's all about the strategy and it's all about the audience. So you have to think about, what position am I going after? What market, what industry, in this case, energy. And you might even get more granular about it and say, well, I am actually very focused on a company. You may have gotten interested even today in a company, and so getting to know exactly about them is very important. What people do on resumes is they put, if you have been in a job, and this is kind of speaking to career changers, they put the job that they are currently in sort of on top of the, across the top of the resume. And if it's the same one you're going after, that's great. But if you are in fact targeting something different, you need to kind of state your intentions and put the target job there. Then next, sort of talking about the contact information. So I'm going to address one of the things that somebody asked about ATS. Here's a big no-no, and it's kind of a behind the scenes thing. When you go to put your contact information in your resume, there are two ways to do it. One is right, one is wrong. Put in a heading that has that information. Do not say insert header, like there's a header and a footer, because ATS cannot read it. So guess what? You just sent your resume in and they have no idea who it's from. So understanding that is pretty critical. Let's talk a little bit even about the contact information. So people are concerned about bias. Should I even reveal the city or state that I'm in? How about my address? Absolutely do not put your address in. Couple reasons. One is from an ageism perspective, looks like you're an older worker, because that's what we used to do. But guess what? You're not going to be mailing your resume out. I'm not going to be showing up at your house. So do not use that. Also, there is a bias, and people can Google where you live and make a judgment about you socioeconomically. So, no reason to do that. When we talk about resumes, there's some psychology behind that. And that is that you're going to read it from top to bottom and from left to right. So what that says is you got to grab somebody's attention. And to me, a headline is honestly one of the most important parts of a resume. So if anybody has seen Jerry Maguire, here's the idea. You had me at hello. You've got to sort of get them right there. HR people spend, or hiring managers spend, a grand total of 10 seconds on your resume before they decide if it's on the yes or the no pile. They'll go back to it, but that's how important it is. I've seen people put the word I do this, I do that. No, you can leave that to LinkedIn profile, but use words like, so if you want to say I support, produce, manage, that's fine. Just drop the I. That's what we mean by an implied I. I'm hoping people ask about this one because is one page make sense? Do 2 pages make sense? And I would say it absolutely. I'm going to stick to my guns on this one. One page for a student with some exceptions. 2 for other people if you've got more experience. Possibly 3 if you've got publications, if you've done presentations, you put it as an appendix. But why is that? It goes again back to, you want to be really clear, you want to write tight. So I'll get a client who's got a paragraph and I can pare it down to maybe 2 sentences. Again, back to what's important on a resume. It's you probably heard of SOAR or SARS. It's about accomplishments, and you talk about what was the situation, what was the opportunity, to either fix a problem or address a need? What was the action that I took? And what was the result that I got from that action? And should I stop?
Yeah, are there any questions from anyone regarding the resume side of things?
That's great. They can just, okay, so I'll keep going,
Keep going.
but
Barb.
don't be shy.
Wait, Barb.
You get some more headline, tagline examples.
I do. So when we get to, I've got one for the student and one for the career changer. So I'll show you what I mean. And yes, you can actually use quotes from a professor, quotes from a former employer. Let's just say the modern resume is probably more creative than you would have thought. More chances
Great.
for creativity.
I
Okay.
think the examples will be a highlight, Barb.
Yeah. And I can move faster through these.
That'd be great.
Okay. Okay, so I'll move to spelling and grammar. If you don't get this right, you could be eliminated really fast. And it's so easy. There's Grammarly, there's Editor, and so go to those. Another technique is once you've put your whole resume together, read it out loud. And sort of bonus round here, I have heard horror stories where people put a really great resume together and then, they're maybe a bit disorganized with their files and they go click, attach, and it's the wrong resume, or it could be all sorts of crazy things, recipes. So please, once you've attached it, open it to make sure that it's the right thing that you intended to send.
Barb, we have a question on, I'm not sure, Paul, I totally understand it. Which of these is the applicant tracking screening out? And it may not understand the quote?
No, that's fine, having a quote. I mean, it's really more about the formatting. And when I say reading, I just mean ability to make some sense out of something, but it has more to do with the formatting. So, for example, you can insert a chart, but a chart will appear horizontally, and it will translate vertically. So just know that. Text boxes, if you put sort of the very important information in a text box while they're visually attractive, an ATS cannot read the content of a text box. Keywords, you always want to be speaking the language of the employer. And so you want to make sure that you have the words that they would use, and sprinkle them throughout your resume, both the frequency and the placement of keywords. So as many as you can get on the first page, use that. And that's important when it comes to keywords.
Barb, there's another question that's come up. Are professional headshots appropriate or not appropriate for your resume?
No. Yeah, that was
I knew what you were
going
to say. That's a great question. Yeah,
and they are appropriate absolutely for a LinkedIn profile, but not for your resume. And in fact, the traffic to your profile is 14 times greater if you have a headshot. If you don't,
on
honestly,
your LinkedIn.
Yes, on your LinkedIn. If you don't, it really raises eyebrows, and unintended consequence. It feels like you're hiding something. So,
great questions. Keep these coming.
Student resume. So we're going to talk about this first. I'll give you an example and then we'll move over to career changers. So yes, be confident, but please don't overstate your level of knowledge. I've had people who say, I'm an expert at. I think that that's not authentic. And I think that it's probably not true to have reached that level of knowledge. So, again, you might want to say, that you have a commitment to excellence or something like that, but to say expert really doesn't make sense. you want to talk about only relevant coursework, and I'll give you an example of that. Always weave in also what is going on in the world and what makes sense. DEI, all have heard of it. It's important. Do you want to show that you know something about that? Well, one of the ways it may be an indicator is if you know another language, if you have done international travel, you may have a broader perspective. Bring it up and be able to sort of back it up. Next one, as far as degrees, you only want to go back 3 years in terms of, yes, put your degree and your major, but including the year that you graduated or the month and the year is fine. If it has been longer than 3 years that you graduated, you can leave it off. If you are in the process of getting a degree, you can put expected completion. If it's, say, within a year, you can put expected completion June of 2022. I bring up attributes because think about, what stage of life you're in, and you don't have maybe a lot to show as far as experience, but you want to show who you are and some of your personal attributes. And a way to validate that is you can actually share some of the words from your assessment. So that's a little bit more creative way of kind of filling the gap of not having the experience.
I think we have a question from TJ. Is that correct? I see a hand raised.
Yeah, I see a hand raised too.
I think it's TJ.
Oh. Oops.
No?
I can wait until the end of it. I think she's about to cover the question.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Hold that thought.
So it says, there's a question in the chat to add SME on a special skill is incorrect. Example, SME in P6.
If you in fact have an expert level that you can back up. So sorry, I'm not sure of that particular example that they're asking about.
It must be technology.
Okay, so yes, you just don't want to overstate what you actually haven't achieved. But if you have, yeah, highlight it. Okay. Gosh, I'll go through this, try to go through this fast. Again, back to experience, talk about capstone projects that you have, as well as the role that you play. Were you a team member? Were you a team lead? Internships, boy, they're great. And I heard a lot about them today. And so don't just kind of say, this is what I did an internship at company XYZ, but not only what did you contribute, but what did you learn from it is really important to include. Testimonials. So you can ask a professor to sort of vouch for you and actually put it right across the top of your resume. Again, social responsibility is something that is very much on the minds of employers. If you've done any sort of volunteer work, community involvement, that is something to talk about as a student. Okay, here is a real live but fictitious person called Julia Hernandez. And she is going after a target called environmental health and safety specialist. So what she wants to show is, of course, her academic achievements. And we talked about put relevant coursework. So that's what she did. She put the classes that would be very meaningful to an employer. If she decided that she wanted to focus on health and safety rather than environment, she may want to swap out what she's saying on coursework. But, again, the relevance of what she's done is very important. Her internship, she talks about what she did. And, if I were looking at that, I'd say, oh, great. These are the kind of things that she's actually had experience with on an internship, and it's going to make the learning curve faster. Volunteer experience, not only did she do it, but she did it within her field. So, you know, that's good and that's impressive. Any questions about that? And it'll be available, I guess, on the download if people want to refer back to it.
Barbara's going to make this presentation available to everyone. So, you know, again, please ask questions. Barb, I do have one question. On the bottom on technical skills, you have Microsoft Office listed. What's the perspective on that these days? Is that just assumed everybody has it?
Yeah. So on the one hand, I'm honestly surprised at times that you would have to list it, but two reasons that yes, if that is a skill that people are asking for, and again, keyword search, then you should list it and make sure that you list it the way that particular posting says. So don't, for example, say PowerPoint, Excel, Microsoft Word, Microsoft Office is kind of the go-to, or Microsoft Office suites. So in that regard, you're right. It's kind of like driving a car. Doesn't everybody know how to do it? But for the fact that it's something that will sort of add up to ATS looking at it, it's important.
So any questions before we leave this resume?
Somebody asked about a headline. I just wanted to point out, you know, for DEI purposes, because this particular person I wrote a resume about, we're saying that not only is she fluent in Spanish, but she's got a strong cross-cultural background to support diversity, equity, and inclusion. You always want to tie in, well, why is that important to the employer? Not just I have it, but how is that going to bring value to them? So that's an example of kind of, and we also did a quote from a professor to sort of say, here's who I am, and here's him, sort of a testimonial.
Looks like TJ has her hand up.
Oh, okay.
Okay, actually I have two questions. The first one was, if you didn't finish education, such as college, but you had multiple years of experience, but you didn't graduate, would you list, would it be suggested in listing that on a resume?
So again, I would tailor it to, if you have education in an area that would serve you for your next job. So for example, if you finish high school, nothing more than that, but you've gotten certifications, or you've taken courses that may have even been outside of formal education, I would probably put that on a resume. If you have a number of courses that you've taken, I would say it probably has to be significant. So if you took a course or two, then I'm not sure that that's worth mentioning.
Okay. And my second question is about I think it's called the ADT, the computer. When building a resume, I had someone, a professional writer that I got offline, and they put the skills on the side. And I'm wondering whether or not the computer or the automated system can pick up on that.
Yeah, it depends on how it was formatted. So, you know, it could be done in a sort of a table, but if it was done in a text box, then it couldn't be read. So I'd have to see actually how it was formatted.
Okay, because it seems like since I start using that, I have less responses.
Yeah, that could be the reason.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so career changers. You know, again, the challenge is that there may be maybe some bias about, well, can you do the job? So I say, you know, you really want to focus on the assets that you bring as a career changer. So tend to be a more seasoned worker, and you have a lot to bring. You've got a lot of energy. You've probably, oftentimes a person is really very focused on purpose. Not that you're not as a college student, but maybe you've made some decisions about what you really want to do with your life and something that would be more meaningful. So you want to really bring that out. You want to express motivation for why are you actually switching careers. It's all about getting current and getting relevant. And so if this is something you've not done in the past, then you really want to, one, talk about what you have done that can be used again, which is also known as transferable skills. And you want to show that you have committed to learning the new skills. So again, back to, well, I heard that you should really put technical competencies on the second page, or it really depends. So if you really want to showcase, yes, I'm proud of what I've done in the past, but I want to show you that I've got current and updated skills, you put them on the first page.
All right, we've got a good question here.
Mm-hmm.
If your resume is uploaded in a PDF format, do you have to worry about headers or text boxes?
Yeah, so ATS can accept PDF or Word. I would vote for use Word as a safer route than a PDF.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay.
We do have a question on a cover letter, but I know we're getting there.
Okay. And actually, oops. Okay.
Great.
Got a trigger finger there. Okay, so here's a guy named Bob Cardoni, and he is a career switcher. And so I will say pivots can be big or small. I mean, you can change from being a generalist to a specialist. You can change industries like we're talking about here. So in this case, Bob was working for CVS. So he's working for healthcare and retail, and he wants to get into the energy business. He also is making a switch from, well, I'm an IT engineer, but I really want to get into something more specific called cybersecurity. So how does he show that he's a good candidate for that and still get sort of acknowledgement of what he already knows? Is he's advancing in IT, but he's doing something different. So back to top to bottom, I would put, and I have put, that he's got certified cloud security professional right under his name. Don't bury it in the bottom. Don't bury it on the second page. Put it right there. Also, well, gee, why is he interested in coming to energy? Because tell me why. So I've included, he's motivated to play a meaningful role safeguarding national power supply. So I just fictitiously said, hey, this guy saw what happened to the power grid in the last year or so, and he felt, very moved. He's got purpose, and he wants to, this is an area he wants to get in. Don't be afraid to actually state that in the headline, which is why I'm saying, to me, it is among the most important things to say, here's why, here is the job that I want, here's a bit of what I've done, and maybe here's a little bit of the motivation why I want to get into this. Certifications, front and center. One other thing I'm going to mention now and later is, if you notice under experience highlights, I've got 2 sentences that just say job scope. This is what he does. He provides 24/7 operational engineering and escalation support. People of all ages confuse accomplishments and job scope. Please, as part of the best practice, right after you put your title, put your job scope. And it's kind of what you were hired to do from a job description. And now I know, oh, okay, this is what this person did. And don't mix it in with an accomplishment, because doing that is your job. Accomplishments are going to take up space. talking about what your job is. So know the difference.
Any questions about this resume?
Okay,
And then Barb, we do have a question on cover letter and tips.
sure.
If you maybe want to, if you just want to jump to that, and then we can kind of move around a little bit.
Sure.
And the question is just, would you go over cover letter tips and then, or an example?
If I can get to the
You
screen.
got
I
it.
will.
You did it.
Okay, so yeah, cover letters. Please don't just reiterate what you had in your resume. It's a great opportunity to again kind of infuse some personality into it. So you want to capture someone's attention. And I kind of did an example of that. I'm going to go back to Julia Hernandez. So here she is, a student. Don't say, I am responding to your environmental health and safety specialist position, and I am, well qualified, as you can see in my resume. Here's a better way to say it. As a student with a degree in environmental science and an internship in an EH&S department for a gas pipeline, I believe I could hit the ground running and accelerate the orientation process for this entry-level position. Way better way to open it up. So the benefit, oh, you're hiring a student. No
Barb,
experience.
you just got a big yes.
Yeah.
Erica said yes.
Yeah, great. Yeah. So, feel free to take what you should absolutely take what you have in the resume, but then infuse that personality. Give an example. Don't just kind of say, well, I am qualified for. I'll just one more. So generate interest. So you can tell a short story. You want it. I'll also say 3 or 4 paragraphs. That's it. You don't want to go on and on. But let's go back to Julia. She would say, a fascination with the environment started at an early age because my parents were nature lovers and taught me how important protecting the climate was. Okay, so now I know that this person didn't kind of randomly decide on pursuing the environment. It was part of who she was. And so see how much more powerful a cover letter is. I can't guarantee that all HR people read them, but maybe part of the reason is because they can be kind of boring. So, put some sort of pizzazz and edge into them, and you'll probably have a much better chance of them being read. Hope that answers it. Oh, one more. At the end, everybody should have a strong close. So you want to just say, hey, what do you want to happen? So can we take this to the next step and discuss how I will add value? You can reach me at this number. So any good salesperson is not going to kind of leave it on the table. You're going to actually say, this is what I hope I can lead you to do next.
And Barb, we have another question. Who do you recommend that we address the cover letter to if we don't know anybody? It's a great question, Howard.
Great. Dear hiring manager is fine. Do not say to whom it may concern. That's, yeah. So dear hiring manager is just fine.
And then another question Mark is asking, where can you list your accomplishments or successful projects for each job held?
In a cover letter or in a resume?
I think it's just a general question.
Where can you list your, okay. So, I mean, on a resume, you want to have job scope, and right under that, you want to have accomplishments, impact statements, whatever you want to call them. You want to limit them to 5 or 6. Have the most strategic, the one that where you hit it out of the ballpark first, because that's how I'm reading it, and you want to grab my attention. And you want to start with the result. That's another thing that people kind of don't do properly. So maybe it's a matter of designed a safety program and directed X amount of staff, and then at the end of it, it turned out that the OSHA claims were reduced by X%. Put that in the front end. It's called front loading. Put that in the front, and then explain how you did it and why you did it, but result first.
Good job. Brian notes that we skipped some slides. Absolutely, we did, but we're trying to address the questions that were coming up to make sure that in the time allotted that we can answer everything. So we'll let Barb go back to, I think you wanted to talk about networking. You were going to talk about LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Does anybody have preferences that they'd like to hear? LinkedIn, networking? Why don't we go here? Let's go to networking.
Okay. So again, I kind of divvied it up between career changers and actually I'll go back one. And students. So for the student job seeker, please start doing this right now. And that is, when you think about, do I know someone who kind of knows everyone? You probably do. And why is that important? It's because they know how to get things done, not just by themselves, because again, it's not just what you know, it's equally who you know. And that is true throughout your entire career. You are going to need to tap into resources if you're looking for a job, if you're on a project, you're not doing it alone. And so really developing those relationships is what we're talking about with networking. So if I were a student and I'm just heading out into the brave new world, I'm going to start with something that feels like low-hanging fruit. And that would be my parents and my siblings, because if I've got older siblings, they are out there working and they know someone who knows someone. That's where I would start. You've got all sorts of people who you graduated with. They're out looking for jobs. And, networking comes in so many forms, and it depends on where you're at with your job. It could be a matter of, like I'm assuming you're doing today. I'm not even sure what's out there in terms of jobs. What do they pay? Who do you know? It's really at this stage of your life, there's a lot of exploratory stuff that you're doing while you've had all sorts of help along the way and classes that you've taken. Now it's time to step out into the real world. And so take advantage of all these people. There's joinhandshake.com, which I think was talked about during the course of today. So you might want to join Handshake. That is made, it was put together by students for students. There are internships out there, there are jobs out there. And the beauty of it is that it's really focused on jobs where no work experience is required. Another yay for people who are trying to break into a career. All right, I'm going to move on.
All right, we've got another couple of questions that have come up.
Sure.
And I think I heard this in an earlier panel. Mark is asking the question. An earlier panelist mentioned not to be a chronic applicant.
Yeah.
And I think what that's referring to, I know in my days of doing recruiting, there are applicants, Mark, where they apply for every job. And I will tell you that the recruiters know who those folks are. So every job that comes available, because they just want to get into the organization, they apply for every job, whether they're qualified or not. And I think that might have been what they were referring to. Barb, you might want to talk a little bit more, but don't be this chronic, constant applicant.
Right. It looks like you're just throwing a dart at the wall and hoping something sticks. Now, the flip side of that is it depends on the size of the organization. So I've had clients who, you know, especially in this virtual world, there may be an opportunity in Houston, an opportunity in Chicago. So I say, you know, in that event, you may not be coming across HR's desk 4 times because you're you know, talking with 4 different groups. So it depends, but in general, you want to have a pretty focused search, and yeah, and not look like you're kind of like, well, I'll take anything, right? You want to look like you have sort of purpose in what you're doing.
Great. Thanks, Barb.
Networking for career changers. I sort of deal with a lot of people more, you know, more in this age group, I would say. And so the challenge with this group is the good news. You know a lot of professionals because you've been out there working. And so it would seem logical, like, well, of course you know how to do this, but not so much. So, you know, again, to me, the low-hanging fruit and where I would go would be former colleagues and managers, because they know you. It's an easy conversation to have. Speaking of conversations, one might say, well, but no, I can't really do this because it's a pandemic. There's a bit of that. Things are freeing up more. But good news in all of that is it's a more effortless sort of venture, because you don't have to sort of get up and meet someone for coffee somewhere. There's, you know, there's a lot of benefit to that, but Zoom, by phone, there's sort of no excuse to not network, and geography is no issue. So you don't even have to limit the people who you talk to, who's, you know, sort of within a radius of so many miles. The issue with that I find with the more seasoned worker is they never thought of going to a colleague because it's been a long time, and sort of, you know, shame on people who don't keep in touch. And maybe they feel like, well, that person used to work for me, and now I've taken a different route, and now they've sort of made it in the world, and I'm feeling like I might be lagging behind a bit. So there's sometimes sort of that elephant in the room that you have to deal with networking, that people are reluctant to. Want to touch on one other thing here. A great source, just had a client who had we're talking about applying for jobs over the course of a year and a half. She had applied for 4 different positions. She really wanted to work for that company, knew great things about it, knew some people there, and even with the inroads of knowing some people, was having a really hard time kind of getting an interview. She just casually mentioned it to her financial advisor, and lo and behold, he said, oh, I actually know the CEO. So she got the job. And don't be afraid to tell people that you are looking. So name of my company is The Career Stager. And I kind of think of it like if you were staging your house and you said, well, I want to sell my house, but I don't really want to let anybody know. I don't really want to put a sign out there, and I don't want to be on MLS listing. It's kind of the same thing, that you actually have to let people know. And, you know, I understand confidential searches. So if you have a job and you absolutely have to be careful about it. Attending industry. Yeah.
We have another question.
Sure.
Is calling the company to inquire about the hiring status appropriate? If so, how long should you wait after applying, or should I contact the hiring manager prior to applying?
So I'll answer it in a different way, maybe. If you want to get the best foot in the door, if you're talking about applying online, I'll tell you that the success rate of doing just that and getting a job is about 4%. If you want to and many companies, you have to apply online. So I'm not saying don't do it that way, but an employee referral is the absolute best way to get your foot in the door. If you just applied for a job through an online with absolutely no connections, no, I wouldn't call the hiring manager. There's no frame of reference, there's no context. And, you probably wouldn't even know what their phone number was. Right, Becky? You're in
Right.
HR.
Yep.
So, no, I wouldn't do that. But, there is definitely a technique to how do you open the door, and then how do you keep that door open through the interview process. By the way, I don't know why, but the world today, it is not uncommon for people to have 10, 11, 12 interviews. And I think maybe some of it is that, well, before you'd have to hop in a car and go to a place of employment today, you just hop on a Zoom. I think it's a little bit crazy. Sometimes HR people feel like, well, I want another set of eyes on this person. And so I'm going to, kind of take 7 or 8 or 9 people, because I used to be able to make a judgment about someone because, hey, I can really, kind of read body language, and they perhaps feel less confident about it. And so don't be turned off if you're asked to come back that many times. It's daunting, but it's happening.
And Barb, we have about 3 minutes left.
Oh my gosh.
But that's okay. This is great. I think we're having great questions. So Erica asked a question. Renewable jobs seem to gravitate to certain regions over others, which renewables are kind of starting to expand across the country. How ready to relocate should we be? And how do we avert potential relocation bias by simply keeping our addresses from the resume?
So she's willing to relocate?
Well, I think her question is how ready should people be ready to relocate? And then the second part is how do they stay away from potential relocation bias by me assuming, like, if I have a job in New York, but I see that the applicant lives in Texas, by not putting the address, does that help?
Yeah, I'm not sure that it helps. I mean, the ready to relocate, back to, you really have to determine what your inventory of wants about a new position, and determine if you're willing to relocate, and if so, when would you be okay about relocating? Get an idea from an employer about, what will they do in terms of assisting you. In terms of bias, I think that that's not as big of an issue. Number one, come to think of it, what you really have on your side these days is employers are desperate for people.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to look at the job market as it is right now. And actually, employees are a very hot commodity. So are people willing to, make accommodations and say, well, maybe we wouldn't have hired somebody from Chicago for an LA job, but, the market is kind of demanding that right now.
Super. Okay, we're just about at the end of the hour. And I have a suspicion we need to invite Barb back. I don't know, what does everybody think? I think we need to have an extended session with Barb. I think this Ask an Expert session is good. Is there any kind of, Barb just got I think so. Very helpful, thank you.
Oh, thanks.
Good comment. Barb, is there anything that you want to just, I think Barb, they want you back.
2-minute warning.
Yeah, well, we're down to about a minute warning.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to do? This is just phenomenal. You have created such a great interest here.
Thanks.
Anything?
Okay, 60 seconds or less. Yes, I can wrap it up really fast. So message to all. Gosh, I've had so many clients who say, like, wow, I didn't really understand the value of networking and how hard it was to find a job. It was never like this. I just send my resume out. So please never take your marketing hat off. Even if you are happy in your job, but there is an internal posting, use all this stuff for, progressing into a different job. And so you always want to stay current. Don't let your skills slip, stay relevant, and big message. Stay connected to people. They are, that's your social capital. The end.
You're getting awesome. You're getting thanks. You're getting lots of great comments, Barb, and hand clapping too. So,
Oh, well, thanks everybody. It's
so
fun.
again, I think I'm going to be talking to Missy that we might need to bring you back. So we really appreciate the time, Barb, and the time that you put into this and your expertise. And again, you can find Barb at the Career Stager. And she's on LinkedIn.
Connect with me. Speaking of connecting, I'm going to be really disappointed if people don't try to connect with me.
You bet, because she might come looking for you.
Right. I know who you are.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, everybody. I hope everybody has a great evening, and wish you much success in your career journeys. And once again, Barb, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely.